Okay, let's talk about odor obedience. Odor obedience is one of the core concepts in nose work that everyone needs to understand to have a really good working team and good relationship with your dog as their trainer, and as their handler, but particularly as their trainer. So what is odor obedience? A lot of people throw this term around, but they don't actually define what it means. Odor obedience is a priority list for your dog of different types of obediences he can have. And what I mean by obedience is if two things are pulling on the dog from opposite directions, let's say a squirrel is drawing your dog's interest and you're drawing your dog's interest, which one of those things wins? That's what has obedience. So a lot of us have dogs with high squirrel obedience. If my dog's off leash in a park and he sees a squirrel and he hears me calling him, if the squirrel wins, he has more squirrel obedience. If I win, he has more handler obedience. Now, that said, that doesn't mean squirrels aren't important to him. It doesn't mean that squirrels aren't distracting to him. It just means he has happened to have more handler obedience at that moment than he had squirrel obedience. Okay? So there are lots of things your dog can be obedient to. Squirrels aren't the only one. There's also food and odor, right? Which is what we're trying to build. Handler, leash, voice commands, toys, other dogs, other people. All of those are important to a dog. And odor obedience is nothing more than making sure that odor in the right context is at the top of the list, and that everything below that list is hopefully far enough down that it doesn't affect your dog's performance. So you'll never be able to eliminate squirrel obedience. Well, maybe you can, but it's not practical for most people. But what we can do is make odor obedience more compelling than squirrels under the right conditions. That's what we can definitely do. And in case you're like, well, my dog loves squirrels more than anything. Well, if you've never seen this, there are drives that will override a squirrel. If you've ever seen a dog wanting to chase an animal and then suddenly needs to go poop. Now, well, poop obedience in that moment was more important than squirrel obedience, right? I've also seen dogs run through that. So those are very driven dogs. So odor obedience means something very specific in each stage of the search. And we're going to go through each stage and talk about what odor obedience means in that. The first stage is the hunt. And the hunt is basically everything your dog is doing before they find the hide, right? So when they're looking for that hide, and I am including before they even catch an odor of the hide. Today, in a lot of these searches that I've seen, there is no hunt stage anymore. You start right from the sourcing stage. The dog can smell it from the start line. And I think that's kind of ruining our dogs. Odor obedience in the hunt phase is what we call hunt drive in our normal classes, okay? And when you hear people talk about hunt drive, to me, what that means is everything your dog does when there's no odor present, okay? So the way your dog hunts during a blank search, that's hunt drive. The way your dog hunts before they've caught the odor, that's for sure hunt drive, right? The way your dog hunts after they've found an odor and you pick that odor up, that's hunt drive, right? So what should odor obedience mean in hunt drive? Well, odor obedience on the most basic level means that nothing else can distract the dog from hunting for odor. So the dog could be hunting from odor and you pull on the leash, doesn't matter to the dog. You drop some food, doesn't matter to the dog. A squirrel runs by, doesn't matter to the dog. That's what odor obedience should mean. Odor obedience, odor gives two basic commands. It gives the commands come and it gives the command stay. Okay, so when odor says come, it means come find me, dog, right? And then when the dog finds it, the odor says stay. And during the hunt section, the hunt is just, it's all about come. Okay, you got to find me and you don't even know where I am yet, but you hope that I'm out there. Okay, so that's the hunt stage. The next stage is the sourcing stage. And so that comprises everything from the moment the dog acquires the odor is in the area to the last stage, which is indication. Okay. And sourcing can be a long process or a short process. Like I said, a lot of searches now they don't even have hunt phases. They just have sourcing phases and then an indication. And the searches can be very fast. And we need to be careful in training that we don't eliminate the hunt phase altogether and diminish our dog's hunt drive. It's really sad when I see dogs who don't know what to do when there's no odor. It's like, what do you think that dogs do in the wild? Do you think they're just always smelling rabbits? No, they go for a long time without being able to smell anything. So anyways, and it's even worse than that, right? Because there's residual everywhere and no actual primary, right? So imagine doing that with your dog, doing a 2-hour blank search where there's residual everywhere and no odor. That is almost approaching what a baby coyote has to deal with on a daily basis, right? So just think about that and think about what we're kind of doing to our dogs when we dumb it down for them. Anyways, sourcing, odor obedience in sourcing phase, it still says come. And it's actually funny that most dogs gain focus during the sourcing phase. They catch the odor and they dive in a little deeper, but some dogs lose focus and some dogs are more susceptible to influence from their handler during the sourcing phase. And what that means is during the sourcing phase, if the dog doesn't get to source, they may be willing to stop the process right there. And that's a conflict between handler obedience and odor obedience. So the dog knows, well, I know I'm supposed to get to odor, but I also know my handler has a treat. So if I can compromise between the two, so I get close enough to source, close enough that my handler will feed me. So the dog is trying to negotiate the best compromise between handler and odor obedience. And it makes it very confusing to the dog because they don't know exactly where they should alert or in what stage of the search they should alert. And you can eliminate all of this confusion by pairing, by saying, you're not working the handler, you're working the hide. Stop trying to work the handler. Even if he has food in his hand, the handler is not going to give you what you want. The odor gives you what you want. After you find the odor, after the indication, then I'll reward. But now you run, if you don't do that, you run into the problem of what happens if your dog indicates before they're done sourcing. And you have to decide whether you can pay that, whether you're going to ignore that, and then hope the dog figures it out on their own. So odor obedience in the sourcing phase, it doesn't just mean come and find me. It also means stay with my problem. And so this is a thing I see a lot. And this comes from doing too many multiple hides. Just like the last problem comes from too many inaccessible hides, where you're teaching the dog it's okay not to get to source. The next one comes from doing too many multiple hides, where the dog learns that I can catch an odor and I can begin to source it, but I can leave and find an easier problem first if I want. So to me, a strong odor obedience would mean that if the dog catches a hide, he sticks with it. And he sticks with it. A high level of odor obedience would mean the dog sticks with that problem, even in the presence of easier problems. So he's working a hard problem out and an easier problem jumps out at him, he sticks with the problem he's already on. Now, you can control that because even though that's considered a high level of odor obedience, that doesn't mean it's desirable. You may want a dog who goes and picks off the easy problems first and then works on the hard problems. But this is a very advanced concept that I don't want you worrying about right now. I just want you to be able to think in terms of odor obedience. The last stage, of course, is the indication. And this is where the odor stops saying come and starts saying stay. Okay? In this stage, basically, nothing should be able to get your dog to leave the odor. And that includes yourself. And I see too much people focusing on the leave when I tell you to, too early, right? It's like build a solid stay before you start breaking that down and getting the dog to leave. Build that dog's desire to stick on the odor forever, no matter what distractions are around. For example, can your dog be on odor while you drop a handful of treats on the floor? If the answer is no, then don't start working on the dog leaving odor and finding other odors. Get the dog to stick to that odor under any level of distraction. And when your dog can do that, then we'll work on getting the dog to leave. Okay? It's just about putting things in the right order. It's not that your dog should never leave odor forever. It's that you want that first, and then you move to the stage of moving and find new odors. But too many people start right from the beginning. Okay, the dog found that one. Go find another one. It's like, well, that's way too early. Way too early. Give it, and way too early, I would spend at least a year on single hides. Now, you do a multiple hide search every now and then for fun, but a year focusing on odor obedience, meaning stay, before you teach the dog that they can leave the odor on command, theoretically. Okay? So, how do you build odor obedience? Okay, now we know what odor obedience means, let's talk about how you can start instilling this with your dog. Odor obedience comes from 3 factors. The first factor is desirability. Okay, and this is where a lot of people struggle, but it's also where they think this is it. This is all odor obedience is. It's just how good a treat you use, and it's not that simple. It will make a big difference if you up the value of your treats, and the most important way to up the value of treats is to make it more variable. So start giving the dog different treats so they can't expect what they're getting, and it's always something exciting. Now, the next thing is people get so stingy so fast. You know, the odor should be a very, very rewarding event. If you think about it in terms of an obedience thing, you know, in a normal nose work class, you're typically doing 3 to 8 hides, right? 3 to 8 hides. 8 hides would be a long class for my classes. Imagine if you gave, that's 8 treats if you only give 1 treat per hide. What did you do in a normal obedience or agility class, right? You might be giving 50, 60 treats, right? So you need to pay each one of those hides with the same value as maybe 8 to 10 repetitions for an obedience to maintain that behavior to a high level, right? So don't be stingy. Enjoy the reward moment. Enjoy that time with your dog where your dog found it and you're praising them and you're rewarding them for finding it. I understand for competition that you might want to go, yes, good job, treat, move. Okay, you might want it all to happen in 1 second. In class, take 5 seconds minimum. 5 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. Take at least 5 Mississippi to devotedly praise your dog and feed your dog without thinking, okay, it's time to move on, it's time to move on, it's time to move on, okay? Really enjoy that moment, okay? Change up the treats, give them more treats, and make them more exciting, okay? That desirability will hugely increase your dog's odor obedience, okay? But it's not the only thing. That if you leave it there, you'll increase your odor obedience, but you'll hit a wall at some point because there's 2 other factors you need. The next is urgency. The dog needs to understand that not only is odor desirable, it's urgent that he finds it, that he could miss out on it, that if doesn't work hard enough, that odor could disappear, which is exactly, again, just everything I tie back into ethology. It's exactly what a coyote feels when he's hunting a rabbit. Yes, a rabbit's very desirable, but more important, it's urgent, because if he doesn't get it now, it could be gone. Either another coyote will get it, a hawk will get it, or the rabbit will disappear because the rabbit's not sitting there waiting for him to find it, which is exactly what we do with odor, right? We sit that odor out and we wait for the dog to find it. Don't you think that's going to diminish the dog's odor obedience if he thinks it's not that urgent? I can get to it when I want. It's the same as leaving a food bowl down and free feeding dogs, which everyone should know, right? It's a terrible thing. Free feeding dogs, it develops a lack of urgency in the dog, that the food isn't that important. Free odoring your dog will do the same thing. Okay, what do they do with odor obedience? Put the food down. Free feeding, when you're trying to build that odor obedience back on, right? Put the food bowl down for 5 seconds and pick it up if it's not eaten. That's all the dog eats in a day, right? That's exactly what you can do with odor. Now, 5 seconds is a little extreme. What I do is I want to see that my dog starts working within 5 seconds. If my dog's goofing off, then maybe I might pick it up. But a great, easy way to do this is what we call a 30-second game. Eventually, we'll post videos about this, but the general gist of it is put several hides out, whatever. Get a timer out. Let your dog search, start that timer. Give the dog 30 seconds to find a hide. And I don't care if at 29 seconds he catches the odor and starts working it, clip him to leash, put him away. Put him away for 5 to 20 minutes. Bring him back in and do it again. Set that timer again and teach the dog, you have 30 seconds to beat me to the hide. And if you don't get there, I'm pulling you out. And if the dog finds it within 30 seconds, beautiful. Pay, move on, start that timer over again. And then the dog has 30 seconds to get from hide to hide. Okay, that's going to build some urgency in the dog. The other thing you can do is build play some competitive games. If you have training partners, time each other. Make it important to you to try to be faster than your opponent, right? That kind of urgency, you'll see your dog's drive skyrocket. I do not believe you can increase a dog's drive while it just being quote unquote for just fun, right? Like as in, I don't care how you perform. Dogs need to feel like what they're doing is important, and urgency is part of that, okay? The last part of building odor obedience is scarcity, okay? In the wild, and I've become really more and more obsessed with learning how coyotes hunt and how hunting dogs hunt in the wild. Scarcity is a very important part of building odor obedience. And this is why I tell a lot of people, do lots of blank searches if you want to build your dog's odor obedience. And they don't understand, how could a blank search, a search with no odor, increase odor obedience? It's because it increases the odor scarcity. It's less common. as opposed to doing more and more hides in smaller and smaller spaces, which is what it seems like a lot of people are doing, especially in trial, where you step into a room and there's an odor right there, right? Do a few where there's no odor, or gigantic 5-acre plots with only 1 or 2 odors in it, right? In the whole thing. Increasing that scarcity makes the dog pay more attention when they catch it. Instead of it being every other bush has a hide in it, it's every 30 bushes has a hide in it, every 30th bush. Then the dog starts checking each bush because he doesn't want to miss it, right? Scarcity, the main exercise is, like I said, a blank search. The more blank searches you do, the more you're going to increase scarcity. The first time you do a blank search with a dog, it's really fascinating what it does to a dog. You bring the dog into the room, you say search, and it could be whatever. You could do it in containers, but I usually do it on interiors. Tell the dog search, and the dog's like, I know this. I go look around the room. So you let them go 1 pass around the room, and then you put them up. The dog's like, what the heck? Did I miss it? I must have missed it. There couldn't have been no odor. And then they come right back into that room with an odor in it, and the dog is active and more driven to find it because he feels like he missed it. That's the key, is you want the dog ideally to feel like he might have missed it, not just that there was nothing. And then he catches it. He says, I thought I checked this spot. And you reward him. You will greatly increase your dog's odor obedience doing that. Now, to be fair, in order to use that in training, the dog has to have an excitement and interest and understanding of hunting odor, right? So the desirability has to be there, and the urgency has to be there first before you can add scarcity. But if you add all 3 of these together, you will have a very odor obedient dog. Don't forget these last 2, scarcity and urgency. That's what everyone forgets, and they just build desirability. And desirability alone can't create an odor obedient dog. Okay? So I hope that all makes sense to you. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. Get out there and build some odor obedient dogs.